Austin apparently pushes Karmelo in an attempt to get Karmelo to move along. At this point, Karmelo retrieves a knife and stabs Austin. Now, we know that this confrontation was caught on video that was captured by the press box camera at the stadium.
You wake up to flashing blue and red lights cutting across the walls of a quiet suburban street. Neighbors stand on their porches in robes and slippers, whispering as a convoy of unmarked black SUVs surrounds a towering mansion said to be worth more than $30 million. Federal agents in tactical gear move with precision, some holding documents in sealed envelopes, others gripping rifles as they march toward the front gates. Within seconds, the quiet neighborhood has transformed into a live crime scene. Authorities confirm that the property belongs to Karmelo Anthony's parents, already under indictment for their alleged role in the GoFundMe scandal tied to the murder case. But this isn't just a casual inspection. This is a raid, executed without warning, described by one federal spokesperson as a surprise enforcement action. Agents are seen hauling boxes from the home, some marked with bright yellow evidence tags, others sealed in black cases. What exactly is inside remains undisclosed, but the sight alone sparks a wave of speculation. Neighbors describe the scene as surreal. One man says he saw at least 15 agents enter the mansion at once. Another recalls hearing a battering ram slam against a side door, followed by shouting inside. Across the street, a group of residents pull out their phones, capturing shaky footage that floods social media within minutes. The videos, some already viewed hundreds of thousands of times, show federal vehicles lined bumper to bumper and agents carrying flash drives, laptops, and what appears to be a safe. The timing of this raid raises immediate questions. Was it triggered by the alleged offshore accounts connected to the $10 million GoFundMe scandal? Was it a response to leaked messages hinting at hidden assets? Or was this a coordinated move to secure evidence before it could be destroyed? And as the footage circulates, people begin to ask themselves the same haunting question. If federal agents were bold enough to storm a mansion of this magnitude, what kind of evidence could they believe is still hidden inside? Would you have the courage to stand outside and watch as the truth unfolded? Or would you look away? You hear the thud of a gavel in a downtown courthouse, followed by the low hum of reporters racing to file their stories. Just hours after federal agents stormed the $30 million mansion belonging to Karmelo Anthony's parents, prosecutors waste no time connecting the raid to their broader investigation. In a tense press briefing, the lead attorney reveals that critical evidence was seized, though he refuses to detail exactly what was found inside the property. The words hang heavy, leaving the public to imagine what could be so important that it warranted such a dramatic crackdown. Witnesses inside the courtroom describe how the announcement shifted the mood instantly. One juror leaned forward in their seat, pen poised, scribbling notes. Defense attorneys exchanged worried glances, while Karmelo's parents sat stiff, their hands folded tightly in their laps. For a family already under indictment, the optics of agents hauling safes, hard drives, and sealed boxes from their home are devastating. Outside, the media frenzy only grows. Camera crews replay clips of the raid on loop, analyzing every detail, the heavy black cases, the agents whispering into radios, the flashing lights reflected against the mansion's polished stone exterior. On social media, theories erupt about whether investigators uncovered proof of offshore transfers, hidden assets, or even connections to witness tampering. Some users frame the raid as a sign that prosecutors are closing in. Others argue it's a publicity stunt designed to sway public opinion against the Anthonys before the trial even begins. The only official response from the family's legal team is a short, defiant statement. "We will not be intimidated by theatrics. My clients have nothing to hide, and any items taken will only prove their innocence." Still, the silence inside the courtroom tells a different story, every eye fixed on the defense table, waiting for a crack in the facade. And now, a deeper uncertainty lingers. If the raid truly uncovered evidence that shifts the balance of this case, will the family's defense strategy survive intact? Or is this the beginning of the end? If you were sitting on that jury, would you see the raid as proof of guilt? Or as an overreach of power? You're sitting in the packed gallery as the prosecution unveils the next step in their strategy. A large screen flickers to life, displaying grainy stills pulled from body cam footage of the raid itself. Agents are shown walking through the marble-floored halls of the Anthony mansion, opening drawers, prying into safes, and tagging stacks of documents. The footage isn't graphic, but the symbolism is devastating. Federal officers combing through every corner of a home, once flaunted as a symbol of wealth and stability. The prosecutor's voice is steady as he narrates the images. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you see here is not routine. These items weren't seized at random. They were collected based on credible intelligence that this property contained materials linked directly to the ongoing financial crimes investigation. He pauses on a still frame, showing an agent carrying out a sleek black laptop, the evidence tag swinging from its handle. Though no details are given, the implication is obvious. Digital records that could potentially confirm money laundering, offshore transfers, or communications that tie back to the GoFundMe scandal. On the defense side, the reaction is immediate. Attorneys object, arguing the footage prejudices the jury by painting the raid as more conclusive than it really was. One lawyer rises to his feet, claiming loudly, "What the government has here is theater, not facts." The judge sustains part of the objection, instructing jurors to focus only on what is legally admissible, but the images have already burned themselves into everyone's mind. In the gallery, murmurs ripple through the crowd. A woman clutches her purse tighter, whispering that the sight of the safes being carried out felt like watching a house of cards collapse. On social media, clips of the body cam footage trend within minutes, accompanied by captions like "the beginning of the end" and "federal agents don't raid without reason." And as the lights dim and the screen shuts off, the silence in the room feels like its own kind of verdict. People are left asking themselves, if the walls of that mansion could talk, what secrets would they reveal? And if you were in that jury box, would you be able to ignore what you just saw? Oversaw the raid on the Anthony mansion. Dressed in a crisp suit, he speaks with the calm precision of someone who has done this dozens of times before, yet the weight of his words makes the room lean in closer. He explains how the raid was not spur of the moment, but the culmination of weeks of surveillance, subpoenas, and quiet groundwork. "We executed the warrant based on credible evidence suggesting concealment of assets," he states, his voice steady but firm. As he details the process, the jurors are shown an inventory list: hard drives, financial ledgers, encrypted cell phones, and several sealed envelopes recovered from a hidden compartment behind a wall panel. The mention of a hidden space sparks a visible reaction. One juror raises an eyebrow, another leans back in their chair with arms crossed. The idea of concealment makes the defense's earlier claims of nothing to hide ring hollow. The defense attempts to chip away at his testimony, asking whether the items seized could simply represent normal financial activity for a wealthy family. But the agent's answer is sharp. "In my professional experience, individuals engaged in legitimate business dealings do not hide documents in concealed wall panels." The statement lands heavy, leaving the courtroom quiet for several seconds. Outside, the public runs wild with the revelation. Hashtags like #HiddenRoom and #SecretFiles trend instantly, with online users speculating about what could have been stored away so carefully. Some claim it's evidence of offshore accounts. Others suggest more personal secrets tied to the murder case. Whatever the truth, the perception is already cementing in people's minds. The Anthonys had something worth hiding. And now, the looming question becomes harder to escape. If federal agents uncovered hidden files and encrypted devices inside the mansion, what kind of story will those items tell once unlocked? Would you believe they were part of a normal life, or would you see them as proof of deliberate deception? You're sitting near the back of the courtroom when the atmosphere shifts once again. The prosecution calls in a digital forensics expert to the stand. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't grandstand, but the weight of his testimony fills the room. Opening a binder, he begins walking the jury through the first round of data pulled from devices seized during the mansion raid. The findings are meticulous, presented with charts and timestamps that connect neatly to the larger financial investigation. One detail stands out above the rest. Multiple encrypted drives were discovered, each containing transaction records tied to accounts overseas. According to the expert, the files show layered transfers, small amounts broken down and shuffled between multiple shell corporations before landing in banks located in the Cayman Islands. He pauses on a slide that shows the exact dates of these transfers, several of which line up suspiciously close to key developments in Karmelo's murder case. The implication is clear: these weren't random investments. They were intentional moves designed to protect money at the moments it mattered most. Defense attorneys spring up with objections, arguing that no one can definitively prove the accounts belong to the Anthonys. But the expert calmly explains that identifying details, IP addresses, login metadata, even the same email alias tied to past family filings, were embedded in the documents. The defense presses again, asking whether hackers could have planted false records. The expert's reply is simple but cutting: not without leaving traces, and we found none. In the gallery, the silence is telling. Reporters jot furiously, while one juror leans forward, chin resting on their hand, as though weighing every word. Online, screenshots of the presentation leak almost instantly, with captions like, They've got receipts, spreading like wildfire. And now, the central question lingers heavier than before. If the evidence continues to reveal direct links between the mansion's hidden devices and offshore accounts, will the jury view this as the final piece of the puzzle, or will doubt still creep in about how the money was really used? If you were on that jury, would you see this as enough to convict or still hesitate to connect the dots? You hear the judge's gavel echo like thunder as the defense finally makes its move to counter the avalanche of evidence. One of Karmelo Anthony's parents' attorneys rises, pacing slowly before the jury box. He argues that the government is weaving a story out of shadows, that the so-called hidden files and offshore transfers are nothing more than the trappings of wealth being spun into something sinister. Ladies and gentlemen, successful families use complex financial structures every day, he insists. That does not make them criminals. The attorney points to the seizure of encrypted drives, suggesting they could contain anything: personal medical files, sensitive business contracts, or even legal communications. The government doesn't tell you what's inside, he says, raising his voice just slightly. They just show you a locked door and expect you to believe it hides monsters. His words are carefully chosen, aimed at planting doubt in the minds of jurors who have spent days watching evidence pile up against his clients. But the prosecution quickly fires back, reminding the court that federal agents didn't just stumble across a locked safe. They found a concealed compartment inside a wall. Normal families, the prosecutor says firmly, do not build secret rooms to store ordinary documents. He lets the silence that follows linger just long enough for the weight of the statement to sink in. The clash between the two sides leaves the courtroom tense, every argument pulling jurors in opposite directions. Some scribble notes furiously, while others sit frozen, eyes darting from the defense table to the prosecution's pile of evidence. Outside, reaction is just as polarized. Some commentators argue the defense has a point, that prosecutors are leaning on spectacle more than substance. Others claim the raid has already done irreparable damage and no speech can erase the image of safes and laptops being carried out under flashing lights. And now, the public finds itself split between two narratives. Is this case about a family unfairly painted as criminals, or a family caught red-handed trying to hide the truth? If you were sitting in that jury box, would the defense's plea for doubt be enough to sway you? Or would the image of that hidden wall compartment drown everything else out? You wake up the next morning to headlines plastered across every screen. Federal raid uncovers hidden cash in Anthony Mansion. The images are unavoidable. Safes wheeled out under heavy guard, laptops sealed in evidence bags, and neighbors staring wide-eyed as agents drove away into the night. For Karmelo Anthony's parents, the raid is no longer just an isolated event. It has become the defining symbol of their downfall. A moment that will be replayed endlessly as the case barrels toward its climax. Inside the courthouse, the tension is unbearable. Jurors file back in with stone-faced expressions, defense attorneys shuffle through papers in silence, and prosecutors prepare to reveal what they've been holding back. Though officials remain tight-lipped about the full contents of what was seized, whispers leak from behind closed doors, rumors of documents tying the GoFundMe scandal to shell companies, and even personal communications hinting at obstruction of justice. Nothing is confirmed, but in a case already drowning in speculation, perception often matters as much as proof. The family sits rigid at the defense table. Karmelo's mother avoids eye contact with the gallery, staring straight ahead, while his father folds his hands tightly, as though bracing for a storm. Every movement, every glance is dissected by reporters, eager to turn body language into headlines. Outside, the divide deepens. One crowd chants for accountability, waving signs for Austin Metcalf, while another claims the government has staged the raid to vilify the family further. By sundown, one truth feels undeniable: the raid has shifted momentum. Whether the evidence inside those safes proves decisive or not, the spectacle itself has left a scar on the family's reputation that no courtroom argument can erase. And as the world waits for the next revelation, a haunting question lingers. When federal agents crash through the doors of a mansion in the dead of night, does it matter what they actually find? Or does the image alone convict you in the eyes of the public? If you were on that jury, would you demand undeniable proof? Or would the raid itself already feel like enough?